So welcome to Taylor Farm. This is Jon Wright with Out of the Woods, and today the tides have been turned a little bit. Haas from GNAT TV is going to be actually interviewing me as we tour around the farm. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of the farm and my history here with the farm, and maybe a little bit about the future of the farm. So welcome and enjoy.
So, hey John, I got a quick question.
Sure, Haas. I knew this was going to happen. What's up?
How come all these damn farms look so rough?
Hey.
What about a weed whacker, buddy?
Hey,
what about
man.
a weed whacker?
You come up and give me a hand here for a day and visit my world.
So, I guess the first thing I'd like to do is, as we just tour your barn and check out your whole world, is I'd like to sort of get a sense of who you are and how you got to where you are today. Because, unless I'm mistaken, I heard you're actually a flatlander, aren't
Haas,
you?
I can't believe you're bringing this up at this point in time, but yes.
Where did you originate
I
from?
was actually born in New York City. My dad was a doctor in the city.
So you're a New Yorker.
New Yorker.
You know, they were always raiding Vermont, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And
we have good feelings about them, you know.
Mixed feelings. But no, my parents bought property up here in 1950 over in South Londonderry.
Right.
And we spent all of our vacation time, free time up here, and I always gravitated toward this kind of lifestyle, this environment.
Now up here or here at this farm as well?
Well, good point. We had the family property in South Londonderry. I took a job here at Taylor Farm, one of my first summer jobs, back in 1975. So I've had almost a 40-year
So how old were you when that happened?
I was 17.
You were 17 and you took a farm job.
Yeah.
And you took that job because of your whole experience of visiting this farm?
No, of growing up in South Londonderry. The property that my parents bought was an old hill farm.
Okay, but it wasn't being used.
It wasn't being used,
Right.
but we always had chickens and horses growing up. There was an old barn on the property.
Okay.
Some hay fields that we maintained.
Oh, so then you were kind of a farm.
I mean, it was a hobby, a gentleman farm.
Right.
My father being the gentleman.
So so then you took that job at 17. Was this was your summer before college? Or?
I had just graduated from high school, actually.
Right.
And I was taking a little time off between high school and college. And I was always attracted to this lifestyle. Growing up here, I knew a lot of the old farmers. This was historically an agricultural community.
Right.
And when I was young, there were 15 working dairy farms right
Just
around
in this area.
In this area. And there are now 2 of us left, still operating. So I was surrounded by, what appealed to me was this sense of community.
Right.
Farmers were just a wonderful, interesting group of people. They tended to have a great family structure. The family was typically all involved with the farming operation, which really appealed to me. And
now this is so you took this job, and did your mom and dad just assume it was just a summer thing? I mean, you're still here.
Yeah.
So would this have terrified your parents?
It certainly, to some degree, would have. Yes. It was. I mean, they loved this lifestyle too. My father bought the property.
They weren't worried
here.
yet.
Well, they were a little concerned, but they, yeah. When I actually settled here in the late '80s, then the real concern arose. But no, at that stage of the game, they saw it as a a summer thing.
Now you did go to college after this job, so you didn't like just run away to the farm.
Right. No, almost. But I went up to UVM. And actually started in the ag school, and partly with my father's influence, he was kind of like, "You're never going to do anything with farming, be realistic. You got to get
it was
some
for
sort
losers. Is that
not
the
so
feeling?
much losers, but just that it was a
hard way,
hard life. He respected the lifestyle, but thought.
But he knew.
Yeah, he was a doctor, and he was, accustomed to making more money than farmers.
So let's. We're gonna go into what is the cow barn.
Yeah. This.
And I understand. Understand you built it yourself.
Yes, this barn was built in.
How did you know how to build a
2006.
farm?
We've
I mean, a
done.
barn,
I mean,
I'm sorry.
you look around here. Pretty much everything we have built at one time or another. I always tell people anything with a slate roof was here originally. Anything with metal roofs is something that I've added since I've been here. I've had a certain amount of building experience. This barn was larger than anything I'd built before. This is 60 by 280 feet long, and this facility
Well, let's go
all of-
inside.
Sure,
Let's
we
go
can take a look.
inside.
Yep.
Okay, so
Who's the Flatlander?
all right, so this is the cow barn you built. How many cows?
This barn is compartmentalized, and
sweetheart.
we segregate the animals by age group. The barn holds up to 75 or 80 cows comfortably. What we're looking at here is a group of young heifers, female cows, which are being bred. This is actually a bull looking you in the eye right there.
And so does the bull attack people?
He could.
He could attack people.
He's a little guy, very friendly, wouldn't
All
bother
right.
you.
So 17.
Never turn your back to him.
Oh, you're funny. Yeah. Would he ram me?
If you were inside there, he might. He is very.
Do they
yeah.
ram you?
We're aware of them all the time
Okay,
and
so
cautious.
you never
of them.
turn your back.
Never turn your back.
I got you. Okay. So you're 17. You're 17.
And,
It's time for college.
17 went off to UVM. Started in the ag school with thoughts of pursuing a farming career.
So you kept on the farming angle, and Dad was okay with that. Mom was okay with that.
Well, they were.
Did they give up by then?
They were starting to.
Were you
Admittedly.
a hard-headed young man at
Yes,
17?
absolutely. Oh yeah,
Wow.
free spirit.
So where
You
does
know,
that come
this
from?
was
Mom
the
or Dad?
mid-70s, remember?
Mid-70s. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Coming up.
I was the youngest of 6, so my older siblings were a
So does
certainly
the
an influence.
does the person who's the youngest of 6 feel like they need to do something to piss off their parents? What did you
Well,
do?
they say that the youngest is always the most spoiled. I disagree, but
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think not. I mean, because aren't your brothers and sisters really raising you and not the parents anymore?
At
Or
that
no?
point,
No, I guess not.
no. I mean, this is getting more involved. But actually, my parents divorced, and I lived primarily with my mother
Okay.
through grade school.
I got you.
I should back up a bit. I went to prep school outside of Boston,
Yeah.
and then through and came here my senior year prep
Gotcha.
school.
Okay.
And then went up to UVM, continued to work here off and on through summers, helping with haying and things like that.
Oh, so you never left it. Once
Keeping
you
the
touched
little-
it, you never
yeah,
really left
yeah.
it.
I had a
So you got
passion
your
for it.
ag degree, or whatever they call that?
I went into, transferred into the School of Natural Resource, got a
Right.
degree in forest management, which again was ironically what ended up bringing me
And
back
why
here.
why the switch? What was the difference between ag and forest in terms of Vermont?
Well, the forestry seemed like it was a similar interest of mine,
Right.
but perhaps a more lucrative occupation than this.
Right.
But
I got you.
you know,
Hi, guys.
feeling the pressure to have some sort of viable career. But
So, did you go into forestry management? Did you graduate?
graduated, and yes, I worked as a consulting forester in this area
Yeah.
for about
Why do you
5
keep
years.
walking and
And the part of the story that I like is the Taylor family asked me to prepare a forest management plan for this property,
so
and that's what really pulled me back in.
interesting.
And
Okay.
in the process of
right.
producing this forest management plan, we were talking about the farm was more or less unused at that point. So
Were they elderly by
yes,
that point?
yeah, the
And they'd stopped farming.
Taylors at that point. The Taylor family was a wealthy family from Connecticut,
Right.
and they owned this beautiful property, but they always had tenant farmers managing the property. A family named Amidons had
So
been
somebody
here
was
since the
always
40s.
running the farm.
Yep.
Now, this when they stopped farming, or was it? I guess what I'm asking was it was still a farm when they asked you to do the management plan?
Yeah, it was This, just to give you a time frame, you know, this was the late 70s, early 80s. Agriculture in Vermont was taking a huge hit.
Was this one at the time when a lot of these farms
A lot
were
of farms
crashing
were
and
going
burning?
out of business. There were about 3,600 working dairy farms in Vermont at that time. And just as a frame of reference, now there are 900 working farms. So
Wow.
we've lost more than
Now,
60% of our
hold
working
that
dairy farms.
thought.
Okay.
What the heck is that?
This thing here, this
what do you
is,
do with this?
well, you might recognize it. It is a street sweeper, actually from the city of Rutland.
Can I touch it?
You could touch it. It's a little bit prickly. Be careful.
It spins. Can I spin it?
You can spin it. Yeah. And
All right. What is it?
so can you imagine why it would hang there?
Cows.
The cow. This is a cow's back scratcher.
So
And
they come right up here and they sit there?
rub against it, get under it. They love this thing. You imagine, you know, they don't have any hands. They can't scratch themselves.
Right.
So they
Oh.
spend hours on that,
So it's-
especially in fly season. You know, in the summer when
Right.
the flies are bad, they love it.
All right. So so the Taylors bring you in to do a plan, and they obviously must like you.
Yeah, we'd had association because I'd worked here over the years. They weren't directly involved with the farm management, but they knew of me, asked me to prepare this management plan. In the course of doing that, we got talking about you know, the use of the land. The family that had been here was
Right.
kind of going out of business, and very few cows left. The fields were starting to get a little bit neglected. And so the Taylors were thrilled that I was interested in revitalizing the farm.
Now, when they asked you, so what does that mean? Were they going to? Did they give you the farm and say, "Go forth and multiply"? What did they?
It is amazing looking back on it how generous and trusting they
Right.
were, because basically there are 560 acres with this property.
Right.
There are 2 houses, actually 3 houses. The old farmhouse is where I live down here, and the Taylors vacationed in another house down the road.
Right.
And they more or less just turned this over to me and said, you know, do what you want with it. They weren't making any financial contribution.
Are you saying
but-
they gave it to you, that you, or did you have to buy it?
Well, at that stage, it was sort of like a tenant farm
Right.
situation.
Do something with it, because
So I moved in, lived here, started acquiring some cows, milking cows. I had to really, on
Did
my
you have
own.
money to do this? Is that what happened?
Well, that's another interesting story. I
Is
came
that-
here, in my naive mind,
Right.
I went to our local bank, and you know, to me, $1,000 was a lot of money at that
Right,
point.
right.
So I drew up this intricate little
Business
plan.
I gotcha.
Took
All
it to
right.
my local banker. I had no equity, no reason why he would loan me this money. And for some reason, he liked what I was doing, liked the way I was thinking, and he loaned me $20,000. Long story short.
So so what's the date now? What year are we at?
This was 89.
89. So 20,000. That's a lot of money.
It
No?
was a lot of money to me.
you.
It's not a lot of money to try to start an enterprise like this.
So how fast did it run out?
About 2 months. You have to realize, I mean, the
No,
farm,
I hear you, I hear
the
you.
farm was in
Yeah.
bad repair.
Right.
There was very little in the way
Everything.
of equipment.
Right.
So I had to kind of prioritize what I absolutely needed to.
Were there still cows, or did you have to buy cows?
There were a few cows, but I had been raising some heifers like these guys down here. And so I came, first few years I was milking about 15 cows here.
Cows.
And I was doing pretty much all of the work by myself, no hired labor, and trying to rebuild all
Right.
of this.
all by yourself, and the 20,000.
Pretty much all by myself, and the 20,000 was gone.
They're not getting out of there. These things. So these wonderful rocket ships that if I were a kid,
You would love
I would love to climb.
it. I always thought submarines.
Submarines, yeah, that'd be a submarine. So what are they?
So these are grain bins where we store the cows. Cows on my farm get a mixture of hay, which we produce here, and commercial commodity grain, which we buy. And grain is blown into these things. The big one is cow grain for the milking cows, and then the small bin here is cheaper grain that we feed to the young stock. So
so how come the youngsters get crap?
it's not crap, but
Okay.
it's a little
All right, let me
less
rephrase
expensive.
that. They get the tuna, right, and the steaks over there. Is that how it works?
The salmon is here. Well, the milking cows are under a lot of stress. We're pushing milk production, so they need a high protein, high energy feed. And the heifers are primarily growing, but not not putting a lot of energy into milk production.
So I'm curious. So you blew through the 20,000, but you were nowhere near ready to be an official farmer, right?
Right. We were.
So it begs the question.
Yeah. What did I
you
do
go
next?
back to the banker? Or was
No,
he really?
I did.
Or was he pissed at you by then?
No. We
no.
maintained good relationships
Well, that's good.
with our bankers. So no, at that early stage, I was determined to try to borrow as little money as I could,
Right.
and to build infrastructure from within, which is really challenging with something like this. There continued to be, but hard scrabble years in the early days. My wife at the time did a lot of baking. We had a small farm stand right down on the road, almost a self-service sort of stand. She did pies and breads and jams and jellies and things like that. And I had the equipment to do custom field mowing for people in the area. So
Right.
I would go out, I'd milk the cows early in the morning, get out, do custom field mowing all day, come back, milk in the
So
evening.
was at that point the farm was growing, but it wasn't. This may sound wrong, but it wasn't yet a full-time job. You could still go out and do outside the farm work to raise money.
Well, it was all full-time. I mean, we were putting in 70 to 90 hours a week,
Wow.
trying to juggle.
Okay.
And remember that I was, in my late 20s and early 30s, so I had a lot more stamina
Right.
than I do today.
I want you. Would you show me the pianos?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where were we? You're making 12,000 pies a day. You're mowing all the fields in southern Vermont, and so it sounds to me like balance is beginning. You're making money. You're loving your farm.
Really?
Really? No, I'm off, right?
No. Well, I do love my farm.
No, but I know that. But was it getting better? It has to getting better.
Yes, the financial, honestly what was happening was we were getting into a financial situation where we could borrow more money, which is typical of
Right.
what happens. You build your infrastructure, you need more capital improvements, you borrow money. and
Because this stuff costs so much money that there is no, in other words, there's no savings. There's no way to be a farmer without going into debt.
the farms that are most successful today are generational farms that have been handed down generation to generation, or
And they have the barns and the tractors.
yes,
They have most of the
they've
infrastructure.
kept up with the infrastructure.
Right.
This is an old facility. This barn was put up in the 30s and 40s, and by today's standards, it's very antiquated. The farms that are really making it have maintained themselves, improved themselves over the years, generational, like I say,
Right.
or they've gotten really big, so they have this tremendous economy of scale. They also have a huge debt load, and when milk prices fluctuate, that can be a killer for them.
So as your debt's going up, your farm's getting bigger, or is it just getting fixed up?
Well, we're fixing infrastructure, but this is the point where we start thinking a little bit outside of the box, and we say there's got to be a better way to do this. And interestingly, in the, I forget just what the year was, but late 80s, there was a wonderful little article in Vermont Life magazine about Allison Hooper, who owns the Vermont Butter and Cheese Company. And it just depicted this wonderful story of Allison milking
Right.
goats,
Having
and
a wonderful time.
making beautiful
Yep.
chev and
And having a good solid retirement account.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I I bought that hook, line, and sinker. I was, it just, the
She
whole
was proof.
picture appealed to me. Producing a product on the farm that was representational of all that we do, and it's still very appealing. The fact that, you know, we milk the cows, feed them the hay produced from the farm, put that milk into our cheese product, sell it right here on the farm. It's a really, it's a beautiful story.
Was it, when you were working on the farm at this stage, the biggest it's ever been, or is it still getting bigger, or where are we at?
We
with
got
that?
to a point, let me think of the year, in the late 90s, we got up to about 65 or 70 cows milking here.
That's not what you
at
have
Taylor
now.
Farm. Not what we have now.
Right.
That was the biggest farm this area had ever seen. Typical, remember I described there were like 15 working dairy farms.
Right.
Those farms were 25, 30, maybe 40 cows at the most.
So you were big.
So we were, and honestly, it was too big. It was, we didn't have the land base for it, we didn't have the facilities for it, I didn't have the management skills for managing. We had 9 employees. We had gotten, at that point, we had started cheese making.
So that day's all gone.
Those days are gone.
Jon
Never-
Wright is gone.
That never to come again.
So you're done with that. Right?
I'm done with that.
There would be no. There would be no. So you're saying there would be no reason to ever get that big again, other than you want to die early.
Exactly. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. The return relative to our capital investment and our, you know, labor investment is minuscule.
Killing.
There are better ways to make a return.
Which brings up
cheese making.
cheese making.
We started, the inception of the cheese making was in 97, 98,
Right.
through that article that I described with Allison Hooper. Sort of everything here I've done, you know, on a shoestring. I sold some cows in order to build our initial cheese plant. We bought used equipment. We did all the work ourselves. We harvested the timber off the property to frame the building.
Cool.
So it was really a homegrown affair. And we were one of the very early, what we call farmstead cheesemakers. There were 12 cheesemakers in Vermont at that point. And
That's it.
We were the 13th, come to think of it. We were that 13 number keeps coming up. Auspicious number.
So hold for just a second. So, I mean, John, you know, I've
We
got
lost
one,
the whole piano thing.
No, I've got no. Keep
Okay.
going, because I've got one of these in my house. So why do you have?
Do you want to get rid of it?
Why do you have 2? Well, that's my question. Is why do you have 2 pianos? And I'm looking at this.
They're not the best pianos.
Right. So obviously, have these been tuned recently?
This one has been. That one is a recent acquisition. Got that in Burlington. I love Craigslist,
All right. So
by the way.
what's going on?
Do you ever look at Craigslist?
Yes, I have looked at Craigslist.
I actually have 5 pianos, and I don't play piano, but we play.
So why 5 pianos?
Why
What are you doing? What are you doing?
I got some.
So you've got.
bizarre
So you got
piano
rid of the
fetish.
cows and you did pianos.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
what happened?
Put all my money into pianos. I think this is the up and coming thing. These are. We do a lot of music on the farm.
Yeah.
This haymow here during the summer months when it's empty. We do a lot of square dances, and the pianos are sort of an adjunct to that. We have a number of musicians, friends, and we'll play up here, and inevitably somebody will jump in.
Why do you do that, or is it just that fun? Is it another revenue
It's
stream?
fun. It's never been a revenue stream. It's
just-
fun, and it's community spirit, which is a lot of what Taylor Farm is. I mean, you'll see as we wander around, people are coming in here all the time, and that is part of our revenue stream. But it's also part of our opening the doors to the community and welcoming people into experiences. There are not very many farms that do this.
That do anything like
And,
this, yeah. Especially around here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the cheese is reminding me of a word that you told me called the milk check, right? And,
Yes.
And let's talk about that. But let's go down to it's where you milk the cows. A little later on, we're actually going to see the whole thing in action.
Right.
But let's just
into
go down
dairy farm.
and check that out. Yep. So I'm hearing the milk check. The milk check is what? Why is there even a word called the milk check?
Well, most dairy farmers in this country conventional dairy farmers rely on simply the sale of fluid milk.
Is that their main source?
That's their main, typically their main source of income. We were a little outside of the box because we started thinking about, we recognized that we couldn't get to a scale that really was profitable with the cows.
You could never feel safe with milk alone.
No.
And are we even talking about the ability to have any money for retirement? Can milk even give you a retirement?
Not me personally on this property. What I'm doing. There are different scenarios where farmers right now, the milk prices in this country are quite good right now, and farmers are getting a little reprieve. They're getting a chance to.
Is that because of that legislation that went through?
Yes, partly.
Where they finally raised the price again.
Yeah. But typically, historically, the milk check has been very volatile. It's all based on supply and demand. So, and supply generally has exceeded demand in this country, unfortunately, which depresses the price. So farmers continually have tried to get bigger, to get some economy of scale, to make.
So you knew you weren't going back to you knew you couldn't sustain the mega
gone
dairy.
as far as we could go size-wise, and recognize that even at that level it wasn't working. That's what got us thinking about cheese making as a more.
So then that became a second major source of income.
Right. Yeah, we still relied on the milk check, and very, very volatile.
Now those two, are those enough to give you a retirement account?
No.
Wow. I mean, when does it end?
When does
this get better, John?
Well, it certainly has gotten better. And in fact, it's gotten a lot better by downsizing the operation and making it something more of a manageable size for me. We have a number of things that are going on here. We have milking the cows, shipping milk. We have the cheese production. We sell cheese both wholesale and retail. We have a little retail shop here on the farm. We do a number of little outside activities still, like custom field mowing.
Is winter?
And wintertime is a boom time for us, typically.
I thought wintertime was bad for farms.
Well, not for us, because again, we've thought a little outside of the box. We have draft horses, which I've had for years, and we do a tremendous sleigh ride business here, which is twofold, because the income from the sleigh rides themselves is good, but it also draws people into the farm.
Right, so there's the cheese.
The retail sale of cheese. So there's this patchwork of things that we've put together that makes a fairly viable situation.
If hemp came through and everybody chilled out and said, okay, hemp's...
There are a number of alternative products.
Would hemp be a crop?
Well, I think just like so many products, the people that got in on the ground floor early in the game would probably do
back in the
fairly
cheese
well.
days.
Yes.
Because right now there's a heck of a lot of cheesemakers.
Right. They're now in Vermont, they're 50 cheesemakers, which is kind of, we still hold our place in the marketplace very nicely, but it has somewhat saturated that. And the same thing would happen with hemp, or hops is another thing that I've been interested in.
So it worked for a while, but then the price would slowly be suppressed.
Typically what happens with anything is somebody sees people making money, it's like honeybees go into a flower. They gravitate toward it.
Yeah, it gets hot.
Yeah,
and then
it's all done.
To squat. There's we passed a fire in the barn.
Sure.
Can we go see that?
You want to go? Well, maybe we better.
Well, let's go see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's blowing air into the fire.
And what's
pit.
he make there? Yeah.
And that's coal, which he's started a fire in.
Yeah.
And he can describe it better than I. But the coal actually, with the heat, turns to what he calls clinkers.
Yeah.
And they're what really produce the heat, which melds the metal.
And he's making what for you?
This is purely...
Pure enjoyment.
Purely, well, I shouldn't say purely. It's a point of interest for visitors that come to the farm. Bob comes up here quite often in the morning for a few hours, and he's producing for himself some iron implements, which I'll show you, which he sells on his own. But this is a forge of mine. This is my workshop area here where we do all our mechanical work. I've had this forge for years and have often encouraged Bob to do some work here, and so he just, within the last 4 or 5 months, he started doing it. So this is our routine twice a day, 365 days out of the year. This is our evening milking. The cows are typically milked about 5 o'clock in the morning and about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And these machines have been in the milk room for washing, but we bring them out to these various stations. We can milk 6 cows at a time in this unit, and you'll see as we go through this, the cows will step up in here. They get locked into place. We attach the machines, milk them out, and then when they're done milking, we release the gate, and they exit, and this swings in preparation for the next cow.
So how do you know when the milk's all done? Does it make a sucking sound?
These machines, I don't trust them 100%, but they actually have automatic takeoffs, which sense the flow of milk coming from the cow, and when it gets down to a certain level, they detach. We oversee it quite a bit. We know the individual cows. Some cows require a little bit more handwork than others. But this is back in the day when we were milking 70 cows. Good deal of our day was spent just dealing with the cows. 2 people would be milking, feeding, cleaning, moving.
The cows was a full-time job.
Cows was a very full-time job. Right. And it's, I mean, it still is now, but we've downgraded significantly so that it frees up our day to do some other things.
Where does all the milk go?
The milk goes into a refrigerated tank in the other room. It's stored there, and either we make cheese with it, and typically we'll do that every other day, or if we're selling the milk to our cooperative Agrimark, the truck will come every other day, pick up milk. And
what makes the choice for you?
It's a choice on my part, largely dependent on the price of milk, right, and whether we can do better putting the milk into our cheese, or right now the price of milk is relatively high. It's kind of record highs. We're getting about $26 a hundredweight, which is significantly higher than we've seen in a long, long time. And so it's to our advantage to sell the milk.
What happens if it stays that high? What happens to the cheese?
Well, I'll get to a point where we have a good cheese inventory now. As we deplete that inventory, we'll get back into making cheese regardless of the price. We know roughly our sale margins throughout the year, so we can anticipate, you know, we're coming into the holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we're going to be selling a lot of cheese.
So does cheese go, like, we saw that we have a shot of your refrigerator. Mm-hmm. Does that cheese go bad? Is there a sell-by date? Or
well, that's one of the beauties of the cheese. I mean, technically, if it's produced right, it largely improves with age. We have some of our Goudas that we age out for a whole year. No, but what that does do is you're tying up capital because we've invested time and energy into the production of that cheese. So over time, we have to raise the price of the product because we've incurred more costs in aging it. So
how much cheese do you make?
At our height, we were making about 100,000 pounds of cheese a year, and we're thankfully a lot less than that. All? Well, it was constant.
Okay, it wasn't.
We were rotating stock all the time and selling all the time. Now we make about 50,000 pounds of cheese a year, and it's all stored on premise here, aged.
And you can produce enough milk to make all that cheese?
Yep. Yep.
Wow. Yep. So before you start, I'm seeing different cows. So why would you have a mixture? Why not just one?
The big black and white cows here are called Holsteins, and they're the most prevalent cow in this country. They produce a lot of milk, high volume cows. The little tan cows here are called Jerseys, and they are lower producers, but their milk is high in butterfat and protein, which is really good for our cheese making. I would actually like to go over time more to the Jerseys. I like them. I like their milk quality. And then this cow here is a tremendous producer, great cow, and she's a crossbred actually between the Holsteins and the Jerseys. And I do quite a bit of crossbreeding. I like to mix the genetics and we get what we call high-bred vigor. This is a cow that's very well suited to my farm and what we do here on the farm, grazing, walking distances. And there you go. All right, so we're ready to start
I guess
milking.
that's the segment. Okay, so the cows are like right backed up. They don't have a, and right below them is that contraption.
Sure. This is the cows are standing in the stalls. The stalls are designed so that the cows are somewhat restricted, and when they make manure, it falls right into the gutter. The chain that you see here is driven by a motor, and this rotates the chain around the barn, carries the manure out, and dumps it in the pit where the pigs are. And the pigs are somewhat integral to the whole process.
So the manure is that pig food?
No, it's not really pig food, but there's a lot in there that
pigs love.
Hay, wasted grain, sweepings from the mangers.
Gotcha.
So the pigs work it all over. The manure that you see in the pit there is like potting soil because the pigs have worked it over so much and really composted it prior to taking it out and spreading it on the fields.
So it's actually better to send it to the pigs first.
It's great.
For food, but also for the composting.
You're utilizing everything. Yeah, the pigs are getting food from it. They're breaking it down.
So so what's the word? So when they take a dump, that's pretty. You can't just throw that on a garden, right? Because it burns it.
It's hot. It's very high in nitrogen.
Compost.
Yep. And I mean, you can, and we apply it directly to the fields where it's less critical. But in general, the ideal situation is to work it, let it sit for a while, let it compost, breaks down, and the pigs help us work it. And then it's the manure is vital to the existence of the farm because we're producing hay here to feed the cows. But in a fairly short period of time, if you weren't returning that manure to the hay fields, you'd deplete the nutrients in the soil.
Maybe we don't have any.
6 cows at a time in this unit. By and large, they're very, very good. But basically what you're doing is you're grabbing the teat between your index finger and your thumb. You're sort of closing it off at the top of the teat and then massaging down. So you're massaging the milk out. If you do it too hard, she's going to kick you. And if you don't do it hard enough, you're not going to get any milk.
There's a lot coming out.
So you got to do a little harder. You got to be a little firm but gentle. You got this? Haas.
I'm going to starve on the phone.
I'm just.
So the first question that comes to mind is why do people choose round bales over the square or the rectangular? I should say.
Sure. Well, it's all about labor. We used to do about 21,000 square bales in a season, and imagine every one of those bales is handled several times, going from it is kicked into the wagon, but then from the wagon,
Right.
handled to put into the barn, and then stacked in the barn. So huge labor. We used to have, 4 or 5 guys on call throughout the summer just to handle the square bales. This operation here with the round bales, 2 of us do everything throughout the summer. It's a little bit of an interesting dynamic because now we spend the summer, the 2 of us running tractors. We hardly speak to one another.
Right.
We're just going through the motions, doing it. If he's across the field, I text him. In the old days when we were square baling, it was very communal, and it was a wonderful. At the end of the evening, after we got the hay put away, we'd have a big supper and plenty of beer flowing, and it was a much different atmosphere. But it was
so round bales are eating dinner in front of the TV.
There's very little TV in my life.
But you
there
see, there's no interaction. There's just we're gonna go watch TV. And
yeah, it's a bit like that. I mean, I hadn't really realized it when I took that on.
Right.
It's a tremendous improvement for our, for the business.
Yeah.
But there's a lost dynamic at the same time.
Now, the only other thing I always notice is the round bales are outside. They seem to be under cover. So if that's possible, why don't the rectangle bales go under cover outside? Why do they always insist on putting them in a barn?
Ideally, these would not be left outside, and there's a certain percentage of waste. The round formation, we lose a little bit. If you left a square bale, because of the dimensions of it, you would lose all of the feed value in a very short period of time. Rain would penetrate it, it would rot.
So round bales are better overall?
No, everything,
really
every
matter.
improvement you hope is a...
Something's added, something's taken away.
Absolutely.
Right.
The hay quality, this is beautiful second cut that we're making right now. This stuff we will actually wrap in plastic, which will help to preserve it.
Now, earlier you talked about how the land gets worse and worse if you don't put manure back on it.
Exactly.
Does the second and third cut, does the quality decrease?
No, it actually increases, and we're fertilizing between cuts.
Gotcha.
Typically, as soon as we've cut, somebody's back on there with a manure spreader, at least applying a light coat of manure.
Right.
These fields are all really in great shape from years of manure.
So before we close, I have mixed feelings about farms, and it's not because I don't like farms. It's just I'm not sure. In Vermont we talk so much about farms all the time, and I don't see farms as great job creators, but I do see farms as keeping the natural beauty of Vermont alive. That's why I've always talked about, like 100 years from now, I don't know if there'll be farming in Vermont. There just might be farm museums that keep the pasture open and the silos up.
Well,
but what do you see?
First of all, back up 1 second. Farms are tremendous job creators, not specifically
so that's good. See, I
on
don't know
the farm, but there's a whole ripple effect because I support my local hardware store, my grain dealer, equipment dealer.
Right.
I don't know the exact numbers, but the ripple effect in the farm economy is huge, and it's because the industry supports so many side industries that you might not necessarily recognize. We've been able to downsize the actual labor force on the farm,
but you still have the ripple effect.
But we still have that tremendous ripple effect. So that's one important thing to recognize. There will be a certain, there's always a nostalgia to this type of lifestyle, the beauty. We're maintaining this working landscape, which is intrinsic to what Vermont is all about. It's what we market Vermont as. You look at a Vermont Life magazine, every magazine has cows and hay fields, and the reality is we're losing that, and the reality is there will be a place for, as you said, these museum farms like Billings Museum. There will be a place for farms like ours that attract the public in and then sell, retail items to those customers. But I think on a grander scale, there will come a time when these farms will really be valued in their local communities for the food that we're able to produce. It's going to become increasingly costly to transport food. People are recognizing that food produced in large commercial operations actually lacks the nutritional value that food produced right here on the farm. You know, you can come to my farm and get milk this evening that came out of the cow, as you saw an hour ago.
Now I get that. I'll play, because I'll play devil's advocate. So my wife and I would love to buy this organic food, but since we haven't seen a pay increase really in real terms in the last 30 years, we're still drawn to the supermarkets. So,
and that's inevitable.
Can organic ever get to the point where I can be swayed?
I think it's there now. People aren't fully recognizing it because the value of the quality of the food.
Not the quality, the price.
Well,
because I hate to say it.
All right, but I'm getting to the price.
Okay, help me.
Yeah, the value of that nutrition that you're putting in your body is superior to the food.
And the taste.
If somebody ate organic food produced locally, your health would be better.
Right.
The medical expenses would decrease. The ramifications would be huge. People haven't fully embraced that yet, but the food, you go and buy a box of cornflakes and put
no, and I'm
milk
not talking about going to an extreme. I'm talking about.
Oh, I eat cornflakes.
Do we see a place where, like, I can just go to the farmer's market and that my food bill would be the same if we did?
It's always going to be difficult because
we're
producing on such a small scale that it's very difficult for us to produce competitively with a larger commercial operation. But the people that go to the farmer's market and buy judiciously and buy small quantities and eat, really, you and I both could eat a little bit less. Than
I was thinking a lot less.
So if we ate better and ate less, we'd be healthier, and our dollar expenses would decrease. It's a matter of mindset, and we're so accustomed to going to the grocery store. It's so convenient. You'd be amazed the number of, you've seen the people come into Taylor Farm today to buy our cheese. They go out of their way. They could pick up.
I know, and they all have good cars.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I get your point, though. Let me ask you, because before everybody falls off this tractor, the other question is that you did something with this farm to help continue it in the future. That may also help it be a museum one day, even though we don't really want that to happen. But just, and the one thing was you put it into.
All of this property here is in the Vermont Land Trust.
Okay.
Which means the development rights have been sold to the land trust. This can never be developed.
Right.
My property, I own 22 acres with the buildings and surrounding fields, and it's integral to this larger original piece of property. If one were sold, there would be easements so that they would continue to have the synergy that I have now.
Right.
And it's a wonderful, it's something that the land trust really, I think we were some of the early farmers that they started thinking about this. How do we couple a farmer with a farm property to ensure that they both
now
can
you
continue?
Don't own it anymore, but you have the right to use it as a farm till the day you die?
It runs with, both properties run with each other.
So
if I sell the farm property that I own, it's in likelihood got to be sold to a farmer. Every effort has to be made to sell it to a farmer who then has access to all of this to continue.
Gotcha.
You know, this might, who knows, this, like you said, this may be growing hemp in a few years, and it might be extremely viable.
So do you see that as the,
well, just to continue that, I see it as being really important that we preserve these properties because we don't know what the future will bring. This field is going to be more valuable for growing crops than it would be for growing a condominium, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I think we're, in general, in this country, we've been very short-sighted in the way we've gone about dealing with small farms and food production. And I think a day will come when.
So it sounds to me like if we were to talk about the future of farming in Vermont, it's likely to continue on small scale, or do you ever see the big scale coming back, or is that just...
Well, there will always be a blend. There are, you know, you get up in the Champlain Valley where they have the land base and the resources. There are farms up there milking 2,000 cows. And they are super efficient. They're very high tech. A lot of them are getting into robotics for milking. They're hugely capital intensive.
Yeah.
And from a ecological standpoint, they use huge amounts of petroleum to grow crops, harvest crops, get those crops to the cows, which by and large are in confinement. Our cows go out on, look over there, the Jersey's out on pasture. They're harvesting their own feed. There's a lot of wisdom to what we're doing here.
Right.
And
which goes back to the way it used to be done.
exactly. And history repeats itself.
Yeah.
You know, this is really a farm of the 1940s and 1950s. And in some ways, I continue to run it that way.
Right. So, would you be a farmer again? You're 17 now again. You're taking the job. Would you still be a farmer?
Absolutely. Not a...
Yeah. It's in your blood.
I always come back, an old friend of mine, a dairy farmer, when I was first starting this farm, he sold me some of the original milking equipment and whatnot that I got, and we're still friends to this day. And we got talking about farming, and he said, farming, he said, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But he said, for me, I wouldn't have it any other way. And it's something in your blood. It's something, the quality, you know, to be out here on this day.
Yeah.
Remember Amy Chamberlain talking about me on there? That was what I live for, to be out here doing
because without this farm, all of us today would be stuck in an office somewhere.
Right.
So yeah, I see that.
See
We're
the
out of
ripple?
time. In fact, I think we've been out of time for like 20 minutes. So we got to close this show. So
You got some editing to do.
I got some editing to do. So would you close your show and we'll hit the road?
Yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for watching Out of the Woods, Out of the Hills, I guess it is, right?
Well, we might be in the woods because I'll have to figure out how to cut this long show. But until then, we're...
But at any rate, thank you, enjoy, and watch all our shows. Thank you, Hans. No problem.
Bam boom bam bam doo dee dee da da dee 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 da 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 dee da 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 da